The knock on the door came 3 days after the funeral. 3 days after I buried the man I once called my brother. Detective Ray's voice was flat. "We're still looking into the insurance transfer, Mr. Collins." Insurance. The word barely registered then. My wife, Claire, was standing behind me, her hand pressed against her mouth in what looked like grief, except her eyes weren't red anymore. I noticed that. I notice everything. The detective handed me a paper. The payout, $800,000. It was transferred to an account under your wife's name. Behind me, she gasped. Too quick, too loud, almost rehearsed. I didn't say a word, didn't blink, didn't ask why my dead brother's life insurance had her name on it. Because silence is better than outrage. Silence lets liars hang themselves. That night she cried again. Loud, theatrical sobs that echoed down the hall. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling fan slicing the darkness. 800,000. And a dead brother. Somewhere in that rhythm of spinning blades, a truth began to take shape. A slow, steady hum of realization. I didn't know it yet, but something inside me had already broken, and I wasn't planning to fix it. It started with the photos. A week later, I opened an old drive in my brother's belongings. Dozens of pictures from our trips, birthdays, holidays. And then, one folder, titled C. Claire. Inside, images of her. Laughing, glass in hand, that same necklace I bought her on our 5th anniversary. My brother had taken them. I sat there, the cold light of the screen carving shadows across my face. The world around me went silent, like the air itself was ashamed. I didn't move, didn't scream. My pulse didn't even rise, just stillness. Every memory began to reassemble. Every time she mentioned him, every inside joke they shared, every sudden silence when I entered a room. All of it lined up neatly, like evidence waiting to be read. The insurance, the photos, her tears. It was all one long play. I turned off the computer, walked to our bedroom. She was asleep, peaceful, her arm draped across the empty space where I used to belong. I stood there for a long time, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. Then I whispered into the dark, "You killed him." She stirred, half awake. "What did you say?" "Nothing," I replied, and smiled. Because I wasn't ready to destroy her yet. I became her shadow. Calm, predictable, loving, a husband returned to routine. But every morning, before she woke, I searched. Phone logs, emails, financial transfers. Bits and pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, would show me exactly who she was beneath that soft voice. My son, Adam, 16, barely spoke after the funeral. He kept to his room. One night I heard him crying softly, whispering, "It wasn't your fault, Uncle Dean." My heart froze. He knew something. I didn't confront him, not yet. I needed the truth clean, undeniable. I traced the insurance paperwork. Dean's signature, yes, but something off. Too smooth, too practiced. Claire's handwriting had always imitated his. She had forged letters before, birthday cards, notes, invitations. Tiny acts that seemed harmless once. Now they looked like blueprints for something bigger. I hired a friend from my old firm, Cyber Forensics. Quiet job, no questions. Within days he sent a file. 2 accounts. One in Dean's name, closed a day before his death. The other opened under Claire's maiden name. The transfer happened within 48 hours of his fall. Car accident, they called it. Brake failure. But I knew Dean's car better than anyone. He was meticulous, obsessive. The brake line didn't fail. It was cut. By then, the silence between me and Claire had become something else. Heavy, electric. Every word she spoke, every touch, every "I love you" carried the scent of gasoline. And I was the match. The lockbox wasn't mine. It was Adam's. I found it when I went to his room to leave dinner, under the bed. Small, metal, dented. A cheap lock that couldn't keep secrets. Inside were photos. Not of me, of them. Claire and Dean. Together. Smiling. Hotel rooms. Restaurants. And a note in Adam's handwriting. Mom said he loved us. Mom said he'd take care of us if you ever left. I sat on the floor, the metal box between my knees. Everything went still again. I realized my son wasn't just collateral. He was a witness. A witness she had fed lies to. Used. I called the detective the next morning, told him to check the insurance trail again. Quietly. That night, I made dinner. Candlelight. Wine. Her favorite song playing softly. She smiled, cautious. "You're being sweet tonight." "I missed you," I said. Halfway through the meal, I placed the lockbox on the table. She froze. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Where did you—" "Adam kept it safe," I said. "Seems he didn't trust you either." Her face went pale. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse. I simply asked, "Was it worth it?" She didn't answer, just started to shake, whispering fragments. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen. He loved me." I cut her off. "Dean didn't love you. He pitied you." Her fork clattered onto the plate. I slid the papers across, the forged signatures, the transfers, the photos, and then I whispered the same words I said that night by the bed. "You killed him." This time she didn't pretend not to hear. She tried to speak, to explain, to cry her way out, but I'd seen every mask she wore. The calmness in me wasn't peace, it was precision. Years of marriage distilled into one moment of control. "I already reported the transfer," I said quietly. "They'll trace it. Every dollar. Every forged line." Her eyes widened, panic clawing up her throat. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Silence. Then the sound of her breath breaking apart, jagged and uneven. She reached for me. I stepped back. "Dean died because of you," I said. "But you'll live. That's worse." She collapsed into the chair, staring at the papers like they were ghosts. I turned away. Behind me, I heard her whisper, "What about Adam?" I paused. "He'll know the truth," I said, and walked out. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the quiet collapse of everything she built on lies. The investigation wrapped months later. Fraud, forgery, involuntary manslaughter. The media called it the widow scheme. I didn't watch the coverage. Adam stays with me now. He doesn't talk much, but sometimes, late at night, he asks questions I can't answer. "Did Mom love us?" I tell him the truth. She loved herself. We were just the story she told. He nods, doesn't cry. He's learning what I learned too late. Love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's a weapon. Last week I visited Dean's grave. No flowers, just silence. The wind was cold, clean. I whispered, "She paid her price." And as I turned to leave, I realized something simple, brutal, and final. Justice isn't about peace. It's about knowing the liar finally looks in the mirror and sees nothing left to save. I didn't bury a brother that day. I buried the last piece of who I used to be.